Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about life lessons from programming. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what would you say you have learned about life from programming? This is a big question. Mm, I've learned many things. I would say that the first thing that comes to mind is that I've learned that a good solution is a very subjective thing. That is really hard. It's really hard to pinpoint and figure out what a good solution looks like. Let me elaborate a little bit on that. So it's a very popular thing to before I became a programmer, I just as most people had very strong ideas on what someone should do or how someone should act in order to get the best results, and I knew very clearly what the best results are. And in a way, I think about it similar to how it is to be a child, where you can't understand how all these adults can be fucking up the planet so horribly as we do. Why can't we just all be friends? Uh, and it's only when you get a little bit older and you start realizing that people are different, there are cultural aspects, there are resource issues, and etc. etc. You start opening your eyes to the wiser you get, ideally with age, the more perspectives and the more information you're able to comprehend, and the more you're able to do that, the bigger the problem grows, and you start realizing all the nuances to solving a problem such as, say, world peace. And I think that that's the biggest lesson that I've learned from being a programmer, because I've realized that when I sit down and say that I'm going to write a feature or I'm going to work on a solution, oftentimes I find that it's not a straightforward process to figure out what a good solution is going to look like, because you have so many stakeholders in the thing that you are making, and so many people are going to depend on the thing that you're making, that you start to realize that, well, in the early days as a junior software developer, you're just questioning yourself all the time, trying to just not write a bad code, whatever that means, because you don't know what that means. You just know that you shouldn't be doing that. And then you get a little bit more experienced, and then you get convinced that, well, the best solutions, well, they're handed to you usually through design patterns or TikToks or people who are extremely good at software development, and you try to apply those things. And sometimes they might work out, and many times they're not going to work out. And you're not, in many cases, able to reflect all that much on why these things are not working out, because you convince yourself that they are working out. And in, at least for me, that was true for me, you get you fool yourself. It's self-illusion. You pretend like these things are actually working out, and it's only later on, when you get even further in your personal development, where you start realizing that the reason why these things aren't really working out is, in some cases, of course, because the fundamental idea was not perfect, but in many cases it is because you have incorrectly applied these tools and practices to situations you didn't really understand. And many times you find that when you're dealing with stakeholders, say, and different types of stakeholders, it can be anything from business people to co-workers to customers and so forth, they all have different needs. And it is a challenge. It's a big challenge. It's easy. I promise you, it's really easy in the beginning because you don't think about it so much. At least I didn't do that. It's really easy in the beginning to create a solution that you feel is good because you only pick one perspective. You pick the perspective of, say, I don't know. You pick the perspective of your manager. Okay, you need to ship the code on time. That is the perspective of your manager. So just ship it on time. And then after a little while, you start to realize that now your manager is angry at you again, not because you're taking too long, but because the system is never working. And the reason why you got there is because you only looked at the perspective of the manager. You didn't look at the perspective of your coworkers and like the engineering perspective. And so you grow and you realize that, well, I can't just try to ship as quickly as possible. I need to balance this equation somehow. I need to find a way to ship on time but also make the right engineering decisions so that the system is working. Because if the system doesn't work, the needs of my manager will change. Customer is a very similar sort of thing, where a product owner or product manager might be listening to the customer to the point where you're just doing whatever the customer is asking for, and then the system turns out really poorly, and then the customer says, the system isn't working for us anymore, and then they buy the solution from somebody else. Even though the customer was helping you create this problematic system, you actually lost them, because you only considered the perspective of the customer and not the perspective of all the other factors that make up a good solution. And this is a serious challenge. It is the biggest life lesson that I have ever learned from software development. I have learned how to try to listen to all the voices that will carry weight in my ability to formulate a good solution, to figure out, okay, what will be an appropriate solution to this problem. Well, I'm not saying necessarily to be a negotiator, a mediator, or a diplomat, but rather to try to understand that, well, I can't just indulge my engineering stakeholders because they want to make this super system, but it's going to be very costly, and it's not going to be the thing that the customer wants. But I can't just give the customer exactly what they want either, because if I do that, then the system will not scale. And my company and my stakeholders, they want things to happen in a certain amount of time period, so I have other restrictions there. And when you start getting better and better at programming, you will start to understand how important it is to really know your stuff, to really understand a bigger picture, and to really have a wide toolbox of tools that you know. Because, and I've said that once or twice before, the worst thing I know is when someone comes to me and says, Fredrik, why don't you just use language A or language B or library C to fix this problem? It's obvious, then can't you just fix it? And I always go, okay, let's take a few breaths, because the problem that I'm solving does not allow me to start from absolute scratch with any language I want. There are restrictions. There are requirements. Everything from functional requirements to quality requirements to technical requirements. There are all these types of requirements on the thing that I'm going to make. In other words, I, as the software developer, I have to be a person who can plug into all of these different perspectives and use my knowledge as a software developer and my understanding of technical matters and problem solving skills to formulate a solution that fits the needs of as well as possible, of course, of everyone who is a stakeholder in this issue. And that is a gift. I feel so lucky over the fact that it's hard as well, but it evolves my way of thinking about problem solving and talking to people. I think in many cases I have become a better person by facing these sorts of issues, because it forces you to learn so many new things from like technical things. It forces you to learn how to talk to people, like social skills, how to communicate effectively, because as I said, like, you can't just say, oh, we're going to do this thing and then have an unhappy customer. You need to talk to the customer and make them understand, why is this a good solution? Why do we have to do things this way? You have to be a mediator, a diplomat, a mentor, and you also have to think about the grander scheme of things and truly understand what it means to apply all the possible ways that you could solve a problem in order to solve said problem. You can't just pick one perspective when you're trying to figure out a solution that is going to fit a vast like a range of different perspectives. So what I want you to take away from this is that this probably the biggest lesson that I've learned from being a programmer or from doing programming is how complicated it is to create a good solution to a problem, because often you will find that there are many perspectives on the same problem. Like, there are many ways that you could look at this issue, and if you want to be a really good software developer, I do believe that you need to be able to see a bigger picture and to understand all the perspectives that of the problem that you're dealing with in order to formulate a solution that fits all the different limitations that these different stakeholders are going to put on you when you're shipping your code. And that is a it is a challenge, and you're not going to be very good at it in the beginning of things, but when you start learning how to do this, you will be amazed at how much it changes your mind. Not just in program, it changes your mind in every possible way. You will start looking at your interactions with your friends and family and like other people in a different way. You will see it's a little bit like starting to see the Matrix Code. You're starting to see all the things that you need to think about in order to create good solutions. And if you master the ability to create these good solutions from deriving all of this holistic picture information, it will change you. And I think it's going to change you for the better. Have a great day.